What up, witches?
What's up?
Welcome to this hopefully fun-filled episode of The Wayward Dragons.
Yeah,
I'm Johnny.
and I'm Kelsey. And this,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm Johnny? Yeah, you are.
yeah. Um,
Sometimes.
in this episode, we're gonna talk about which witch are you, if you want to put a label
Which
on it.
witch is which witch?
Yeah, which witch are you? So we're gonna talk about different types of witchcraft that you can practice. I'm gonna disclaimer this before we begin. If you don't want to put a label on yourself, you absolutely do not have to. We're gonna be talking a lot about a lot of different types of witchcraft, and frankly, a lot of these irritate me. I was getting very angry while I was doing the research for this because a lot of these are stupid. Because they come up with different types of witchcraft all the time. Like when you Google this, different types of witchcraft besides like the main like three. It
Okay, I am interested to see what you're talking about there.
I think I think we both have two different things in mind, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think you think
Yeah.
something, and I am talking about something totally different. So some of this information comes from The Green Witch by Erin Murphy Henscock. This is mainly if you are looking to be a green witch, which we'll talk about in a minute. Kind of like the stepping stones to start doing that practice. I bought this because of the herbs and stuff that she talks about in this. And then some of this comes from the Modern Guide to Witchcraft by Sky Alexander. So I don't know if it's a she. Some of it's from that. I will say we will be going into Wicca, if at all, at a later date. We're not even going to cross that bridge right now. So that's where some of this information came from, and then some of it just came from the internet, as always.
And some of it I'm gonna throw
Yeah.
interjections in for there's because we did not talk about this beforehand because there are many different types
Yes.
of witches, so I'm interested to see where Kelsey goes with this.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the things that we have very different opinions on.
Maybe I don't. A lot of the things that I was finding, I think should just be a part of everybody's practice. Like honoring your ancestors. Like if you do a lot of ancestral worship, okay, fine. But there were some I was just like, I am so confused on why this is.
Are you referring to like hereditary witches in
No.
particular?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah, when you inherit something, that's something completely different. You inherit powers because that's how mediumship is. A lot of times, psychic abilities go through the maternal line with a lot of things in life. So that's something completely different. I'm not even going to talk about that, but like there was one I found that was like ancestral, and I'm like, but I feel like that's part of everybody's practice to a degree. Yeah.
So
I'm like,
when you get into ancestral practices with like witchcraft, like if you're an ancestral witch, and you can have multiple of these, that's maybe where you're coming from here. You can have multiple of these in your practice in your wheelhouse. It's not specifically like this is what you have to have or this is only what you can work with.
yeah.
So ancestral witches, they typically, yes, they honor their ancestors, but they typically work with their ancestors, and like you'll see this a lot in certain like voodoo and voodoo traditions where they call forth their ancestors. You also see it in some like Shinto practices as well. and different, like, especially like southeastern, I don't know, yeah, southeastern Asia. You'll see a lot of this where they'll do ancestor practice and work with ancestral spirits. But yeah, I get what you're saying
Like,
about
yeah,
I get what you're saying about like people should do it or you feel that they should do it, but a lot of that comes from certain like regional practices and a lot of cultural practices,
yeah,
just within themselves.
yeah, yeah. There was a lot, and we'll talk about. It's one of those things of like I don't necessarily call it you being a witch. I think it's who you worship as your deity.
So you're delineating, and please correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm just trying to understand. You're delineating the practice of what they're doing versus the type of which they are. Like you're not you're not saying that this person is this type of witch because they do this practice. Is that correct?
Like, okay, if all you do, if like, okay, one of the witches that I found on this list was, let me bring it, was an angel witch. So it invokes and communicates and works with angels. So my thought process is that is your chosen deity, is the angel in which you work with, is is how I am taking it, because
So
you can have a different god and goddess that, or both, or whatever you have, but if that's what you've chosen as, I see that more as a deity, because that's a thing, that's a being.
I have come across that terminology. I have an issue with that terminology because it's not really an angel witch. Typically, what you're doing is you're practicing high magic or as a high magician, and so it's you're either a high magician and you can be a high magic practicing witch, if that's how you want to identify.
Yeah.
Um, so that is high magic is a thing within itself, and like I said, you can be a or ceremonial magic. I think is the proper
I
terminology
was
there.
like,
You can be a ceremonial magic witch,
yeah, where you perform
um,
high magic.
and that's all well and good. I mean I guess you can specifically say because with ceremonial magic you could also work with demons and
Yeah,
angels, depending on how you're doing it. So you could specifically say that you just work with angels, but I think having that, I don't really see a point in having that divide there.
that's the problem I
It's
was running into.
it's segregating for the sake of segregation. Like
Yeah,
I get that you want that distinction and you want to say, hey, I'm a high magic practitioner and I practice this way, but
yeah,
you don't necessarily need to have a definitive full description on what you're doing. I mean, if you want to, that's
yeah,
fine, but I think that's going a little too far. I think
yeah.
that's it's similar to if you walk up to a Christian and you mentioned them being a Christian, or if you hear a Christian talking, and growing up in the South with a lot of Southern Baptists, you have this a lot, where you know people a lot of them won't say that they're a Christian. They'll say their denomination.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, but you're still a Christian. And they'll take it and like,
Yep.
especially with Southern Baptists, when it comes to like talking about Catholics, they'll say, oh, they're
Oh,
Catholic. They're not a religion, or they're not Christian. And a lot of Catholics will say they're Catholic. They're not Christian. But you're still Christian because
yeah.
you are, in your aspect, you are following the path of the Christ child.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and like in your path to divinity. So really, that's you are still 100% Christian because you are allegedly following the teachings of the Christ child.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of like
Um,
what I was running into, is
okay.
it like one of the things I ran into was coven witch versus solidarity. And it's like, I don't, that to me, that's not That
that's
doesn't
not a
need to
type of
have a
wit like that.
label. That's just a
Well,
preferred practice, whether you go with a
yeah, that
coven
is.
or you're solo. That's not something we need
I
to
understand.
stick witch with. Like that's just a preferred
Well,
practice.
you, I, again, you know, it's you. I get the point of like solitary witch versus like a coven witch, or someone who practices and is partially does solitary, but then will do like sabbats with other people. Um, so I understand that. I also I when we talk about different types of witches, typically in my mind it goes to what practices and traditions are you following.
Yeah.
Um, So again, yes, it is good to delineate between, if you're having a conversation and someone's like, "Hey, do you want to come and, you know, participate in this event?" You can say, "No, I'm a solitary practitioner." Um,
And that's the moment to say that.
yeah, but I wouldn't
I like
necessarily identify like your type of witchcraft as solitary,
yeah.
but I can see why people would.
Yeah. I wouldn't say solid like a solidarity witch. I am a solidarity practitioner. This is how
Yeah.
I choose to practice. This is how I choose to do things, whether it's in a group or by myself. How I prefer to do things. I don't think that again.
Well, I
I
think that
don't.
is more us arguing semantics.
Yeah.
I think that's more us arguing semantics because they have, a lot of this comes from like which articles you're reading it or which sources you're reading it from.
Yes. Yeah. Because
So, but yeah, so what?
there's tons of stuff that I found online, like just tons of stuff. Um, my thought is I'm gonna go over kind of the main types, like green, kitchen, hedge, death. We'll go over kind of the main ones, and then we'll kind of talk about a few minor ones that were kind of irritating me or to me that don't make any sense. Because there's one I found, I was just like, I'm doing this and talking to my husband, and I was just like, I don't understand why this is even a witch, because this should be, if you're doing spell work, this is, I'm so confused. Like,
Well, some of it, like I said, some of it comes from which tradition you're following. So like, you have your Gardnerian versus your Alexandrian, which they are similar,
yeah,
but they're also differentiating, and you know you wouldn't have one go to a circle of the other typically because of how they do their practices.
yeah, yeah. But no, this is what what did you think I was going to talk about?
Oh, I thought you were gonna like go through all the different types of witches at it. Like that's I'll interject as we're going. Like I said,
Okay. I was like, what did you think
I'm
I was
sure we have slightly different views on how these are done. So
probably? Um, um, there's a quote from the Green Witch that I really loved that I was like, I need to say this before, and I wish she put this in like the beginning of her book. Um, but she quotes, witchcraft itself is a practice that involves the use of natural energies as an aid to accomplishing a task or reaching a goal. Which I thought was kind of interesting. That's a nice way to put that. Witchcraft acknowledges a god and or goddess and recognizes that magic is a natural phenomenon. Before we begin. It's like that's actually, I thought that was a good nice way to start that. So the first one I want to talk about is a green witch. So these tend to be your herbalists, your healers, your naturalists. They're defined by the relationship to the world around them. So they're going to be deeply connected to nature and all things that encompasses around them. Um, they tend to leave a green path, whatever that means to them. It's mainly their interaction with their environment. So they might be completely off grid. They might be completely homestead. They might be that type of person. They could forage a lot and make their own medicinal medicine. It's the main difference I see between a green witch and a kitchen witch is how it's the same products. You have the same herbs. It just depends on what you're using the herbs and stuff for, because you can either make a tonic, a tincture, something medicinal, or you can use the same stuff to make a really delicious meal. It just kind of depends on what you're going for. These used to be village herbalists, the village healers, the village midwives. Um, a lot of this, or village wise women, wise people, um, because of their medicinal herbal knowledge. A lot of this was passed from person to person. These people might not have grimoires if they choose to. A lot of this information was just passed down from wise person to wise person. Um, they may, if they are going to interact with spirits, they might interact with animal or just nature spirits, so elementals, um, who guard nature, because that's mainly what they're working with.
So, with how you're defining this, um, from your point of view, you would classify an elemental witch, something like a sea witch, as a green witch. Then,
I would see it as a subclass. So
okay.
you are choosing to work with nature, but what you have
Hmm.
chosen to work with within nature is unique to yourself. So whether you choose to work with water, in whatever water that you choose to, I would still say that you would be either an earth elemental or green witch. To me, those are kind of interchangeable in a way, because you are working with nature, you are working with an element, but whatever element you have chosen to work with is unique to you.
Okay. See, I would, and I'm gonna be sorry. I'm gonna be interjecting through this entire episode. Uh, so from my point of view, uh, I would classify green witch as just nature abroad and working with the natural world, uh, which is something that a lot of witches do in general.
Yeah. Well, that's what I
But
was finding.
this would have a yeah, but this would have a green witches would have a heavier focus on. Uh, and green witch, honestly, it's a newer term.
It is.
So it's something that the author of that and whoever came up with the term may have taken all these like ideas
Mm-hmm.
and just formed a collective ideology around it.
That's
But
part of what she talks about, is the term is relatively new. And each path obviously is unique to each person. How they define it is different from how, uh, like you and I define it one way, but you define it another. But she does go
so
into that in this.
it's almost to me. So I haven't read the book, and I'm not super knowledgeable on green witches. It's not something I've delved into. It's like I said, it's a newer term,
Mhm.
but it seems to me like some of the stuff from green witches has just been like, let's create an eclectic terminology that's not eclectic witch,
Mhm.
and uh, you know, to force all these other things into it. So it almost seems like, and it's like my perspective, but it almost seems like they're taking a terminology and just shoehorning all these other practices under that umbrella.
Kind of. I see it more as your herbalists, your your practice your you're practicing more herbal remedies and
Hmm.
stuff like that. I think that's what I envision it being, is you you are very much a forager. You're going out to forage things and very much use the world around you to create food, medicine, anything that you need. That's
I'm gonna have to do some research on Green Witch.
Because, I mean, that's mainly what, like, she talks about, you know, how to connect to the elements. In this, like, she talks about, like, Paige just turned into the power of flowers, and stuff.
Well, yeah. So there's a whole different sect of witchcraft that is they are rose witches,
Yeah.
and again, it's like a whole rebranding thing, like trying to shoehorn certain things in, or trying to take certain things, and um, but that's the whole thing with it. But it mainly focuses on the spirit of the flower and uh, how different flowers mean different things. So, but like I said,
Yeah.
I'm gonna delve a little deeper into this Green Witch.
Yeah. I take it as someone who, again, is an herbalist,
Mm-hmm.
who wants to use the power of herbs and flowers, because there are a lot of medicinal flowers, um, using them to make medicine. That's how I take it. And then, like, kitchen to me is you use the same properties, you're using the same products as like a green witch, but you're doing something very different with it. You're using the properties of the herbs, and instead of making a tincture out of it, you're making a roast or a soup or something. You're using that magical property of the herb, and instead of putting it in oil to let it sit, you're putting it into an oil because you're frying pork or whatever you're making. You know, that's how I took it.
Yeah,
Because it's like, while doing this, it was a lot of like how it's a lot of how you interpret it to be. There's a lot of labels, and if you choose to have a label, you have a lot to pick from. A lot.
yeah. But I
And
just
it
did a
gets
quick Google
confusing.
search on Green Witch,
Yeah.
and like the quick Google search, basically it's describing it as, like you said, a herbalist,
Mm-hmm.
but it's someone who worships Mother Nature and the
Mm-hmm.
plants themselves
Yeah.
as the. So it's still delineating, like separating, like sea witch and uh,
Yeah.
animists and all that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I would say it. This is how I kind of see it. Is you have like elemental magic, which right here, and then you have all four elements. You know, so if you're a green witch, you know, you obviously worship Mother Earth and the earth, and then, you know, if you're a sea witch, then you obviously worship water, fire, and air. You know, so it's kind
mhm.
of how I envision it. Is you got elemental magic or whatever right here, and then you've got your four or five, depending on what you believe,
Yeah.
as branches.
Okay.
That's how I kind
So what
of.
else you got?
So this is where I saw a lot of times on Google green hedge and witch or kitchen all kind of weirdly interchanged, and I'm like, these are not all the same things.
No, because a kitchen witch is someone who does their practices
In
like
the
in the hearth and home.
yeah,
Their whole thing there, yes, they may use the herbs and stuff, but they do the spell work through food preparation.
yeah,
Typically, they will have like
yeah,
their tools are typically like that they use for
yeah,
their magical practices and magical preparations in the food are, things that they have
yeah,
anointed and given over to
yeah,
whatever deity that they serve, or whatever power they are
yeah,
drawing from. And they'll have like their mixing spoon will be
yeah,
their wand. It's kind of that sort of thing.
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
so it's a little bit different there.
Yeah. Um and this is how I'm going to take what I have researched. But a hedge witch is someone who crosses the bridge between our realm and the spirit realm. Whether in whoever that spirit is can drastically change. Whether that's ancestral, animal, elemental, whoever we're talking to, I don't It don't matter. That's how I am interpreting that. Someone with mild or moderate psychic abilities to be able to go to talk from our realm to the next realm. That's how I'm taking it. That's how I'm taking it.
Okay.
Because I don't know how else to take it. Not real sure. Because I kept finding like contradictory things about what it was. Like, oh, why did I have to? Like Hedge Witch and Kitchen Witch and Modern Guide to Witchcraft. She quotes the terms head witch and kitchen witch can refer to someone who follows a home-based, free-form spiritual path that can't be clearly defined or identified as an existing neo-pagan path. In some circles, they connote a person who engages in a shamanic practice involving spirit journeys or tracing, often with the aid or support of herbal knowledge. So I just take it as someone who can go back and forth. However they get back and forth is up to them and their personal preference, because you can go back and forth different ways. So we have already talked about Kitchen Witch. We have already talked about that. Crystal Witch is someone obviously who practices a lot with crystals, but they could also practice with energy. If this is someone who moves a lot of energy or connects maybe with auras, something like that. I figured this might be someone who might be into Reiki healing because of all the energy work and crystal work that is involved with that. The next one, I found this termed a couple different ways: cosmic, moon, or astrology witch. Because I kept finding them as different things, and I'm like, these are all the same thing.
Yeah, it's basically it's the practices, and what they do is based off of
The stars.
the cosmology. They work a lot with birth charts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm like, why are these three different things? Like
a lot of them, if they do spell work, they will take it and plan out their spell work based off of what, like, certain time of day. Like, say if you're, doing something for work, you would do it in the hour of Jupiter on Thursday.
yeah, 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 yeah. So it's someone who's huge into the zodiac and the stars and all the planets and all the astrology stuff. Yeah. The next one, eclectic witch, who is someone who picks and chooses what they want that suits their practice, and this can change from day to day, month to month, week to week. There's no set rules. They just pick and choose what they want to practice, and it eventually becomes their own. I think everyone's kind of an eclectic witch because you can you pick and choose as a person what you want to practice. I just think that's
unless you were trained in a certain tradition, more than likely you are in some way, shape, or form an eclectic witch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I just kind of interpret it with everybody, because everybody's different, and my practice is different from yours, and yours is different from Joe Bob down the street or whatever. You pick and choose.
Don't mess with Joe Bob down the street. That's some dark shit.
Everybody picks and chooses what works best for them. I do stuff different from everybody else. We've already talked about elemental. I saw divination in more than one way while doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So I take a divination witch as someone who is huge into divination, and their way of divination is unique to them. So whether that's runes, stones, bones, tarot, a pendulum,
oracle cards, pendulums.
Yeah, like however they choose to whatever form of divination they choose, but they are really good at that form of divination. Like that is their jam. That's how I took that because I saw it in like different ways, and I'm like, this is all the same thing. Um, and then I saw like ancestral witch, but I also saw death witch, kind of in the they're kind of I saw them kind of worded the same. Of this is someone who works a lot with ancestral spirits, but they also would be a medium, so they would
So
pass people over.
yeah, and this is all necromancy.
Yeah,
And no, I don't mean necromancy isn't like the fantasy, like, oh, I'm gonna raise people from the dead.
yeah,
It's communing with those who were passed before,
yes,
whether it be ancestors of the land, ancestors of the blood, ancestors of the spirit and craft, or you know ancestors of whatever else. It's just communicating with those who have had
yeah,
influence on building who you are as an individual.
yes,
And like I said before, so a lot of this stuff falls into other practices. You see that a lot with voodoo and Fudan,
yeah,
and then with certain Appalachian traditions as well.
yeah. That's why I was having like a hard time with this because I'm like, this is in other practices. I don't understand why we have to put like a label
Well,
on
and
something. That's why I was getting
I
really confused with this, in my
personally,
opinion.
I'm going to sound like an old fogey. So personally, I blame witch talk
Yes.
because you have your little witch talk witches and who are all, oh, love and light, do this and this, and that's all fine and dandy. If you want to be a light worker, go for it. But the problem is that people have started just using terminology that it's not meant for, or making up their own terminology,
Yes.
or will strip certain aspects, and you're an eclectic witch. You're stripping certain aspects from different traditions, and which honestly,
Yes.
it's funny because they'll do that, like, and then they'll complain about cultural appropriation, but
Yes.
that's a whole other conversation.
Yes.
Like, you're going to culturally appropriate and then complain about people who
Yeah.
culturally appropriate.
Yeah.
It's the pot calling the kettle black. But that's not what I'm here for today.
Yeah.
So you'll have these individuals that will take it, and it's do your practice your way, but don't be a hypocrite about it.
Yeah. Well, like,
And don't just make up new terms because you don't know the terms for what they're called, or you don't
yes.
understand the terminology of something. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean you can make up what it is and
Yeah.
then get pissed off and say, no, it's this, it's this.
Yeah.
Guys,
That's not how
there's
this
no
works.
point in that. Like, everyone's practice is their own.
Yeah.
People come from different traditions and respect those traditions. Like, you've got, Celtic witches that practice in certain, stuff that's specific for Celtic deities and
Yeah.
Celtic cultural differences. You have the Brujas and Brujos,
Yeah.
which are Hispanic witches uh, that do healing and death work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You have people who practice Santeria. You have, like I said, voodoo, Voodoo. You have people who practice Shintoism, and there's there's so many different types of witches out there. But the thing is that a lot of it just comes from tradition that you're trained in, and like what you're doing.
Yeah.
You have like the fairy witches, or those who work with specifically with fairies. And
In the fact.
again, this could be roped into Celtic in some ways, but in other ways not, because it just does pull from a number of different things. You have gray witches who,
Yeah.
don't believe that magic is inherently good or evil, or dark or light, whatever, and they walk the middle path and believe that everything should be an energy exchange. Uh,
I kind of.
you have, I hate the term gypsy, but because it's a derogatory
Yeah.
term, but you have gypsy witches that, practice Romani
Yeah.
stuff. You have just all
I mean,
sorts of
you
different
pull up a
things.
laundry list of things. Like,
And like,
it's crazy.
even outside of paganism, you have like, you do have satanic witches that will
Hmm.
take it and practice stuff. And again, they're high magic witches, even though they're calling themselves something different, like with the angel witch.
Yeah.
But they're high magic witches that are practicing high magic just to a different end and to a different deity.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's a
I
lot
think
of what I was
that's
finding.
yeah, I think that's the thing that people miss. And like I said, it's I blame witch talk because you have all these people out here. It's like, oh, I'm this and I do this practice and blah 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 blah. It's like that's great, but and that's fine. That's what you want to call it, but don't market it as this is something new that you've discovered or
Because
invented
it's not.
or whatever. Because traditions evolve and traditions change and names change. But this reality is that you can't get mad when people call what you're doing something else because you know that's how culture evolves.
Yeah.
You're not being disrespectful about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Well, like,
Sorry, I hijacked your episode.
no,
I'm
you're
sorry.
fine. No, you're fine. Well, I'd like to piggyback on the last episode that we did about sex magic and stuff. It's like I kept coming across the term sex witch, and it's like you just perform sex magic. It's
Uh huh.
these are not the same. Um, like I came across art witch, which uses color theory, and it's like, okay, when you practice different in like spell work, whatever you're choosing to do, different colors have different meanings. This isn't you just
Mm-hmm.
calling yourself an art witch. Now, if you put spells
Uh,
into your art, that is something totally different. But
I have a book. I gotta go check and see who it's by. That's actually really good for this. If you want to delve into color and magic, I'll be right back.
no, you're cool. I need to get water.
So, Color Magic by Raymond Buckland, and we've talked about Raymond Buckland before. He's no longer with us. He's originally from Ohio, I think. And there's
Aha.
like a whole thing that's set up for it. But in this book, he actually went into what the different colors mean in different like energies and different situations.
Yeah.
Great book. Highly recommend. There's like all sorts of fun practices in here and like little experiments that you can use with your craft.
Yeah.
And like, there's some scientific explanations and stuff.
Yeah.
Highly recommend checking this book out.
Yeah.
Unleash your inner power.
Well, that's one of those things where I was like, I'm reading that, and I was just like, this isn't a witch. This is just part of magical practice in general. Like,
Yeah, and it's fine that that's the practice or the part of the practice that you focus on, but
yeah,
just because you're focusing on a particular thing doesn't
doesn't
mean that you're
like that's all.
not, everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what else? Mental witch was another one. A mental witch works
Mental witch?
mental. Yeah, they only work with their mind, and I'm like, okay. That doesn't make any sense. Um, music, which spell work can be performed in tunes and lyrics. So it's like, okay, will you use music to help you with whatever you're doing? Some people need, music to meditate and stuff. Some people like to have music in the background as they're performing spells and spell work and stuff. Like, I'm so confused.
Okay, so listen here, honey. If you're calling yourself a music witch, this is what you are. You're either using shamanic practices and shamanic drumming
Yeah,
to get yourself into a magical mindset,
yeah,
and or you are a bard.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
a fucking bard.
yeah,
I'm sorry. I don't mean to curse here for that, but you're a bard. That's
yeah.
what it's called. That's what it's been called for hundreds of years, if not longer. You are a individual who puts forth energy and manipulates energy and does spell work through musical acts, through poetry, and through performance.
Mm-hmm.
That is called a bard.
Yeah, 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 yeah. There were some I was finding that were just they irritated the piss out of me. I'm just like, this is
No,
not
no,
a witch talk.
I get what you were saying about you being irritated now because, like I said, and I blame witch talk for this because
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, I'm this because I do this, this,
No.
this." People, do your research. There are
Yeah.
terms for these things, and it's not the terms you're using. And if you want to use new terms, that's fine, but don't get offended or don't push back when other people are using it because just because you follow through with
Yeah.
a practice and it's a particular part of a practice, like I said earlier, it doesn't make you special for doing it that way.
Yeah. No. Oh, a dream witch also can be called a hedge rider, and I feel like this is just another version of a hedge witch because it's someone who integrates dreamer practices into their craft. And it's like, okay, so you can astral project, but you also interpret dreams, which is that's a whole different ballgame.
And we did a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
But again, guys,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop saying
Like, I
just
just kept getting,
just rewind this episode like 10 minutes and listen to my rant again. Oh,
yeah, like, okay, a tea witch. And it's like, okay, I see this as a form of divination because it's someone who reads tea leaves, coffee grounds, and stuff like
well,
that.
and it's herbalism because you're an herbalist as well because you're using certain keys for certain practices.
Yeah, yeah. And then you go into the
And I have a
hereditary,
friend named T. Is this just like her specific brand of witchcraft?
I guess. Yeah. And you got the hereditary witch, which you're born into the practice and this is what your family chooses to do. But I think that's
And
just,
that could mean a number of different things.
yeah, I think that's one of those things of like, I feel like hereditary and eclectic are this is where they're kind of similar because the family over time has chosen what to pick, what to practice, and then it's just
Well, and
become family practice at that point.
yeah, you can start off as an eclectic witch, and over time it would turn into, or you could start off with any number of witches, and at time it would turn into just your family's tradition
Yeah,
of witchcraft.
yeah. The poison path. I thought that was kind of funny. And I'm like, okay, a lot of plants are some plants are poisonous and you have to do something to them to make them not poisonous anymore. Like, oh, yeah.
So,
I'm
what
just
you really
like,
have to worry about here are the venomous plants.
yes. Yeah. I was doing this and I was getting so irritated because I'm like, okay, this is just not we're just sticking labels on things just to stick labels on things. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, like techno witch. I'm like
that I've actually heard of, and
I've I've
it's just an individual because there's like a delineation of, and this is more of a mindset. So there's a delineation of there are a lot of traditionalists that say you should not use technology in any way, shape, or form in your practice.
yeah,
Uh, Techno witches are saying that we need to evolve with the time,
yeah.
and typically they say no, we should be using technology mainly in our practices, or some happy blend. I think that depending on what you're using it for, technology is fine.
So I will take this to a different extreme. So, and this is completely fiction, what I'm about to say. So, one of the characters in Gail Martin's Deadly Curiosities is what I would say more my definition of a techno witch. So he's very good. He's learning weaving magic in the books, but he uses that magic to hack the same magic he would use to make tapestries. He eventually
Mm-hmm.
uses to hack into databases and stuff. That's what he. So when I think of a techno witch, I think of that's what pops into my mind is someone who is very good at
Gotcha.
hacking and uses
Sees the
pest.
weave in a technological way.
Yeah,
Yeah, but typically techno witches are like individuals who use technology in their practices.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, oh, hey, I don't have a fire. Here's a light bulb.
Yeah. Type thing. Seasonal witch, and that's the last one we'll talk about. Someone who practices with the seasons. I'm a little confused there because
Honey, that's just called a witch.
yeah, I was like, why are we
Like
putting a
you're
label on
practicing with
this?
the wheel of the year.
Like,
You're turning with the wheel of the year,
yeah,
and you're practicing different things as the wheel turns, honey.
yeah,
That's just called a witch. Like you're a Wiccan witch.
yeah. I was getting so irritated. I'm just like, I'm sitting here at the computer and I'm just like, this, and this isn't
Yeah.
going into like brujas and all that other stuff. Like that is something totally different. And I'm just like, we're just sticking labels on things just to stick labels on things, folks. Like,
Well, it's because everyone wants to feel special and feel unique and feel like their version of witchcraft is different, special,
yeah,
and original. And it's not, and it's okay to not be original. Like it's okay to have tradition and practices.
yeah. Well, and it's okay to not have a label. It's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay. Like, I do not define myself as a witch. I define myself as a spiritual person. That's just me.
your practice is between you
Yeah.
and whatever, however you view the divine,
Yeah.
and that's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's find what works for you,
Yeah.
as long as you're not taking away the rights and freedoms of anyone else.
Who cares?
Find what works for you,
Yeah.
and go with it.
As long as you're not murdering people, you're not harming people or yourself, you're not taking the rights away from other people, and you're not hurting anybody, I really don't care what you do.
Well, you're not consensually, or you're not non-consensually hurting someone, because if you have a magical practice where you
Yeah.
flog another person, kind of references
Yeah.
back in our other episode,
This is very true.
yeah, then go for that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's if that's your path to divinity, then
Yeah.
go for it. Just don't take away the rights or
Yeah.
abilities of anyone else.
Yeah. Are you ready to read some cards?
Um, I was really confused when you started this and you said that angered you, and I get why, because
I was fired up last
and
night.
a lot of these witch talk people would
Mhm.
actually, there's a type of witch that you didn't really reference, and I would classify most of them and most of these little subcategories under that, and that is a baby witch, and that is someone who is just starting out and
Yeah.
just starting to explore, and so you're like dipping your toes into a bunch of different things to find out where it works for you.
Yeah.
That's
I
what I
don't
would
like that
classify a
term.
lot of these people as.
I
What,
do.
baby witch?
Yeah, I don't like that term. I just it doesn't don't sit right. Like you're just a beginner. You're just starting out.
Yeah.
Just say you're a beginner. You're just starting your path. Like I don't, and that's why I said you don't have to put a label on something if you don't want it to be, because if you're just starting this out, you don't have to put a label on yourself because you just started. And
Right.
labels are meant to be changed over time. And that's why I said I think everybody is just an eclectic witch, because you pick up what you want to practice as you go through your path, and you might be more green witch one time, and then you might because of life be more of a sea water witch, and then it might change again, and it might change again. It's a label, it's not meant to stay. Like
Because we as individuals are meant to grow and evolve and
uh,
change.
like that's why I'm like, I think everyone should just stick with eclectic, and then if your practice leans more towards one way sometimes, then that's just your practice right now. Like I don't think that you
Yep.
have to put a label on every single thing. It's fucking irritating.
So on that note, no, you're good. On that note, we are going to move on to our tarot reading.
So what did you pull?
I pulled the Eight of Discs, also known as the Eight of Pentacles, the Eight of Coins, the Eight of Stones, because it has 100 different names because people couldn't decide on what to call it.
Gotcha.
What about yourself?
I pulled the World.
The whole world?
Yep, it's in my hands.
So you've got the whole world in your hands? So the Eight of Pentacles is a card of apprenticeship and mystery, or mastery, not mystery, mastery. When this card appears in a tarot reading, you are working hard to improve your skills and become a master at what you do. You may have recently changed your work, education, or financial circumstances, and now you are applying your sheer determination and concentration to master the new skill that you are learning. You are diligent and hardworking, and you are applying yourself fully to whatever is at the center of your attention. As you do the same task over and over, you work your way towards mastery of your craft, and through your perseverance and unwavering attention, you create success.
Okay. So, keywords for the world: fulfillment, harmony, and completion, absolute unity, perfection, and accomplishment that draws from inner and outer sources. This card signals the harmony of the inner and outer worlds and reaching a level of enlightenment. An era of one's life is complete, and there is joy and celebration that is coming to welcome it. This card's lesson is I belong. So all your hard work is paying off, and just keep on trucking there, buddy.
Keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be the moral of our episode, is just keep doing you, being the best you can be, and live your best life, and keep working hard because it's paying off.
It's paying off.
And just be you.
Yeah. Yeah. So join us for our next episode. We're going to be talking about different types of salt. This would be a nice episode to put after talking about different types of witchcraft. Salt is a major part of practicing. That's one of many tools, but it is a big one with a lot of different uses, and there are a lot of different kinds. So I figured that would be a nice thing to put at the back of this. So join us next time for that. The next normal episode, where that's what we're going to talk about. I hope everyone had a lovely Easter, Ostara type, whatever you celebrate around this time. Hope everyone survived April Fool's Day. So please rate, view, subscribe. Please tell a friend. Please join us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you have a topic recommendation, a book recommendation, or if you are having a moment and need someone to talk to and don't have anybody to talk to, please email us at thewaverdragons@gmail.com. So until next time,
I'm Johnny.
and I'm Kelsey. Bye.
Bye.